Have you ever seen that famous picture of Clyde Barrow leaning against a Ford V8, shotgun in hand, with a confident, almost playful smile on his face? It's a look that's both charming and chilling. That smile tells a story about a man who knew exactly what he wanted and wasn't afraid to take it. But to really understand that smile, you have to go back to the beginning, to a place far from the open road and roaring guns. Clyde Chestnut Barrow was born into a poor rural family in Texas. They were sharecroppers, part of a system that kept them perpetually struggling. When the family farm failed, they moved to a rough part of West Dallas, a place nicknamed the Devil's Back Porch. It was a slum, a shantytown built from scrap metal and desperation. For a young Clyde, this wasn't just a home. It was a classroom. The lessons were harsh. The world is tough. Authority is not your friend. And if you want something, you better be willing to fight for it. He wasn't a big guy, but he was scrappy and quick. He learned to survive on the streets, running with his older brother, Buck. They started small, stealing chickens, then maybe siphoning a little gasoline. But these weren't just mischievous pranks. They were acts of survival that slowly chipped away at any respect he might have had for the law. For Clyde, the law wasn't a protector. It was just another force trying to keep him down. His first arrest came when he was just a teenager for failing to return a rental car. It seems minor, but it was the start of a long, brutal dance with the justice system. The real turning point for Clyde was his time in Easton Prison Farm. If you think prison is bad now, you can't even imagine what places like Easton were like in the 1930s. It was a hell on earth, known for its back-breaking labor under the scorching Texas sun and its unspeakable brutality. The guards were cruel, and the inmates were even crueler. Clyde, still young and relatively slight, was a target. He endured horrific abuse, things that would break most men. But it didn't break Clyde. It forged him into something harder, colder. Inside those walls, something inside him snapped. He committed his first murder in prison, crushing the skull of an inmate who had repeatedly assaulted him. Another prisoner, already serving a life sentence, took the blame. This act, this first taste of lethal violence, changed him forever. He became determined to never, ever be caged again. He even had another inmate chop off 2 of his toes with an axe, hoping it would get him a medical parole. That's the level of desperation and cold ambition we're talking about. He would rather be maimed than be powerless. When he was finally released, thanks to a petition from his mother, the young, scrappy kid who went in was gone. The man who walked out was a hardened criminal, filled with a burning hatred for the system that had brutalized him. He walked out with that chilling smile, the smile of a man who had seen the worst of the world and decided he would become its master, not its victim. Now, let's meet the other half of this legendary duo. Bonnie Parker was, in many ways, Clyde's opposite. She wasn't a product of the slums. She was a bright, creative young woman from a respectable, working-class family. She loved poetry, she did well in school, and she dreamed of being on stage or in the movies. She had this spark, this yearning for a life bigger and more exciting than the one laid out for her. As a teenager, she fell in love and got married, hoping for a grand romance. But her husband was unreliable and soon ended up in prison himself, leaving Bonnie feeling trapped and disillusioned. She was working as a waitress in a dreary Dallas cafe, her dreams of fame and adventure slowly fading into the greasy air. She was bored, restless, and hungry for something more. She scribbled poems in a notebook, poems filled with a sense of fatalism and a longing for escape. She was a loaded gun waiting for a trigger, a starlet without a stage. And then, one day in 1930, she met a man with a smile that promised all the danger and excitement she had been craving. The story goes that they met at a mutual friend's house. Clyde had just gotten out of jail, and Bonnie was there, helping her friend who had a broken arm. When Clyde walked in, the connection was instant and electric. He was handsome, confident, and had that aura of danger that she found so intoxicating. He wasn't like the other boys she knew. He talked about his life outside the law, not with shame, but with a kind of defiant pride. For Bonnie, Clyde was the embodiment of everything she had been dreaming of. He was her escape route from a mundane life. She was utterly fascinated by him. He was a real-life outlaw, the kind of character she'd only read about in pulp magazines or seen in the movies. His stories of robbing stores and evading the police weren't just stories. They were a promise of a different kind of life, a life on the edge. He saw something in her, too. He didn't just see a pretty waitress. He saw a partner, someone with the same restless spirit, someone who wasn't afraid. It didn't take long for fascination to turn into participation. Their first crime together wasn't some grand bank heist. It was small, almost clumsy. Clyde decided to rob a hardware store. While he was inside, Bonnie waited in the getaway car, her heart pounding. Some accounts say she was just the driver, others that she held a gun Clyde had given her. Whatever her exact role that night, she crossed a line. She went from being an admirer of an outlaw to being an outlaw herself. That first taste of crime was a rush. It was terrifying, yes, but it was also exhilarating. It was real. It was a far cry from serving coffee and dreaming of a life that would never happen. She had found her stage, and Clyde was her leading man. He had given her a role in his dangerous play, and she took to it with a passion that surprised even him. The bored waitress was gone, replaced by a woman who was ready to ride or die. You have to remember the time this was all happening. The Great Depression had a chokehold on America. The banks had failed. People had lost their farms, their jobs, their life savings. There was a deep-seated resentment towards the government and the financial institutions that people felt had betrayed them. The system was broken. For many, the American dream had become a nightmare. Into this world of hopelessness stepped Bonnie and Clyde. When the newspapers started printing stories about this young, attractive couple robbing banks, the very institutions that people blamed for their misery, a strange thing happened. They didn't just see them as criminals. They saw them as rebels. Though we're sticking it to the man, fighting back against a system that had crushed so many. They were David against Goliath, only their slingshots were Browning automatic rifles. This created a powerful and dangerous allure. While polite society, the law, and the government condemned them as vicious killers, a significant portion of the public was secretly, or not so secretly, rooting for them. They were folk heroes in the making. Their youth, their apparent love for each other, and their sheer audacity captured the public's imagination. But they weren't just robbing banks. They were living out a fantasy of freedom and rebellion that millions of people stuck in their bleak lives could only dream of. Bonnie was smart enough to understand this. She used her flair for the dramatic to cultivate their image. The famous photos of them posing with guns and cigars weren't just random snapshots. They were carefully crafted pieces of public relations. Bonnie, the poet, would send her poems to the newspapers, telling their story from their point of view, painting them as tragic figures doomed by fate. This public fascination gave them a strange kind of protection. People would leave food and water for them, warn them when the law was near. They were criminals, yes, but for a moment in time, they were also America's sweethearts. This mix of public adoration and societal condemnation created a whirlwind of fame and danger that would ultimately seal their fate. The Outlaw's smile had captured a nation, and the ride had only just begun. Thank you so much for watching. If you were captivated by the beginning of this incredible story, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you don't miss the next chapter in the thrilling and tragic saga of Bonnie and Clyde. See you next time.